who wants to take minutes today? Kevin did it last time.
Nancy will take minutes if she's late.
Okay, we can tell her that when she gets on. I was going to say, I think it's going to be a brief meeting, but every time I say that, we end up having a long meeting, so I won't say that. We don't have a lot of action items. They're primarily updates and then one project for our next step. And so let's do the roll call first. And why don't I just read from the screen who's here? And so myself and Patrick and Kate, Brandon, Diana, and Kevin. And Nancy should be joining us shortly. Okay, and were there any public comments submitted?
No public comments submitted. Okay,
and so updates. I'm not sure how many of you were able to join or watch the PSNL meeting on Wednesday. It was a long meeting, although the length was not because of our item. Our item probably lasted less than an hour, but the ambulance contract was on before us and had quite a bit of public comment. We had, I think, 29 is what Brandon counted, or maybe they announced public comments. And many of them were reciting the talking points of San Diegans for Justice, which included transparency in terms of making everything available as soon as it's possible to do so. Whistleblower protection for complainants. No law enforcement on the commission. The department making available all information, all data to the community. And maybe Kate can help me. I know there were 5 and I just thought of 4. Do you recall the 5th one, Kate? She doesn't either.
Youth seats?
No, that wasn't on the list. Anyway.
Yeah, it might have been the nomination process.
Yeah, that may have been what it was. Anyway, but most of the public comment centered around that. There were several representatives from Mid-City CAN who spoke on the youth seats. Some of them had people read theirs because they were in class. It was kind of interesting because our presentation went over our recommendations for the ordinance and also what we thought should be in the permanent standard operating procedures. But the motion they passed didn't focus on specifics. But in terms of feedback from the commissioners, Stephen Whitburn had concerns about the proposal for the community-based selection committee. He wasn't necessarily opposed to the committee, but well, as he put it, if there's 9 people on the committee, you have 5 people deciding who's going to be on the commission, which is an interesting way of looking at it. He indicated he would like for the council members to be able to make some direct appointments, and then suggested that some other bodies be able to select people. And he mentioned, I think specifically the Human Relations Committee and the new Office of Race and Equity. Marty Van Wilpert wondered whether or not there should be 4 youth seats. And I had not in my presentation talked in depth about the proposal for the Youth Advisory Committee. I said I was going to mention it. And then when it came to the youth seats, I forgot to do that. And so Brandon chimed in and explained that tonight. I think that that satisfied Marty's concern. trying to think of who else. I remember Raul said a lot of supportive things. He reiterated his thought that we should have a staff attorney, and talked about funding. And I forget what else he said, other than I do remember that I texted Charmaine and Brandon while he was speaking, saying I love Raul. So he was very supportive of the commission. Well, and I think all of them were supportive of the commission. Anyway, the motion that they adopted was actually attached to the agenda, and it was prepared by Henry Foster, and it simply directed the, so I can find it here, the city attorney to begin to draft the implementation ordinance, and indicated that the following topics should be considered: the number of commission members, the term length, qualifications, method of appointment, and the circumstances and process for removal for cause, which is specified specifically in the ordinance. And then it asked that they define 5 terms: police misconduct and police officer misconduct, which the measure be required to be included in the ordinance. And then they also asked for definitions of review and evaluate and investigate and investigatory proceedings. And not quite sure what the issue or concern was there, but they want the definitions of that included in the implementation ordinance. You know, there are several references to the commission having the responsibility to review and evaluate, review and evaluate cases, review and evaluate investigations, review and evaluate discipline. So I guess they would like to have a definition of what it means to review and evaluate, what it means to investigate, and so forth and so on. But they didn't get into the specifics of what they would see, what they would like, to be included. So we gave recommendations for each of those items, at least the required items. We gave a recommendation for the number of commissioners, the term length, the qualifications, the method of appointment, and the procedures for removal. And the motion didn't make reference to, accepting our recommendations or reference to any of the persons who made public comment, other than the comments that I referenced from the council members. And we also were kind of expecting them to ask us questions, and there wasn't really any questions. They just went directly into council member comment. And so that was the action that was taken. And I don't know how long it's going to take for them to come back with the draft. And I don't know what will be included in the draft. I'm assuming, since they didn't ask questions, that they were accepting our recommendations, but I know that they also received recommendations, which I understand are fairly similar from San Diegans for Justice and so forth. And so, and perhaps the city attorney will just come back with some options, and they'll they'll vote on those options when they come back. So the next item on the agenda, any questions about that or anything that I missed, Brandon or anybody else who attended the full cater?
I think you covered it. Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, I agree with Doug. I to be honest, I was expecting some questions, and I know they were trying to move forward as quickly as possible since the meeting was so long. But yeah, everyone seemed just pretty supportive of the recommendations. I think the majority of the public comments were fairly in line with what our recommendations were. I think the one thing that we did hear in the public comments is we did carve out a kind of an exception for the former law enforcement officers outside of the County of San Diego. And several comments said there should be no law enforcement ever. So there was that little difference, but in general, I think it was quite positive.
So Kate, do you recall any or have any comments?
I didn't stay till the end because I had a CLE that I had to go to after my comment. I was already late for it. So, so I made a comment and then I had to leave.
Okay. Anyway, so I think that then at the end we mentioned.
Doug.
Yes.
Doug, I was there too. I also had to leave after 3.5 hours because I also had another meeting. And I just wanted to say that you did a really great job making that presentation. I left right as you were finishing, and you represented us really well. So thank you.
So, well, thank you. And it was kind of difficult to summarize everything in the time limit that they gave us, but I think I actually got under the time limit. Excuse me. And at the last slide of the presentation, or last slides of the presentation, were regarding the items that weren't on the agenda. And I mentioned that the interim standard operating procedures we worked on were initially, we were told, going to be on the agenda. And I mentioned that the city's employee relations sent it to the POA and they had not received a response yet. And there was some confusion as to what version the POA received and so forth. Some people think it's a delaying tactic by them. I'm not quite sure. But I think Monica spoke up and said it wasn't, her office's, they sent it to them in plenty of time. But anyway, whatever the reason was, they have until now February 19th, which I guess is next week, to express their concern. They had informally expressed a very minor concern, and it wasn't really an issue. It was just making sure that the 1-year limit for imposing discipline, which is specified in the Peace Officers Bill of Rights, was incorporated into the document, which would be easy to do to say we're going to comply with the law. Anyway, so we'll find out next week whether or not they have any other concerns. And this may be a forbearing of what's going to happen when everything goes to meet and confer. And then the appointment of the executive director, we also were expecting that, and we're told initially by Council Member Monica Montgomery Stepp's office that would be on the agenda. As it turns out, I think the issue is that they have to create a city department for the commission, because you have to have a city department to hire people into, just like they're going to have to, by ordinance, create some of the position classifications. And so they have to, by ordinance, apparently, create the department before they can hire the executive director. And so it has to go up to the full council. So I'm not sure what the timeline for that is. But the good news is that Charmaine is getting paid in the meantime with the funds from her former position, and then the budget process was not on the agenda, but we did get an update from the mayor's office. Brandon and I and Charmaine met with Matt Gordon, and Matt, how do you pronounce his last name, Charmaine?
Really know.
Okay. Who is the
Jagelin, something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Sorry.
I'll just call him Matt Y for the time being. Used to be on Georgette's staff. He is the mayor's director of policy for public safety and something else. With regard to the budget process, we were concerned because the budget committee met last week and looked at the mid-year financials, but there wasn't any reference in the IBA report to funding of the new commission, and we were concerned. Well, we were expecting that to be part of the action that the council would be taking, and so we met with council member or council president Campbell's staff last week. We were kind of confused as to why that wasn't, and they didn't really have an answer for us, which is why we set up the meeting with the mayor's office. It turns out that the mayor's office did not make recommendations of how to fill the, I forget what the size of the gap is. It's, anyway, the significant deficit that the city is facing. And so that will be action that is going to be presented to the city council, we were told, in April, which means that if they're acting in April on adjustments to the current fiscal year's budget, by the time that the council acts, there's only 2 more months left in the current fiscal year. And it takes the city at least a month to hire staff. And so I don't think we're going to have any additional staff other than Charmaine until maybe June. But we did make very clear the need to have additional staff, and that the current situation of only having 1 staff member, especially with additional responsibilities, because we're supposed to be receiving, which we're not receiving yet, all the complaints and classifying those, and plus all the other work of establishing the new commission, as well as the ongoing operations, is just untenable that we don't have an additional staff members. And they heard that loud and clear, but we'll see what happens. We also talked briefly about the need for other budget needs, including legal counsel and office space, equipment and technology needs, and so forth. We did meet with them, including the mayor himself, back in, I think it was back in December, maybe it was early January, and gave them our spreadsheet with our projections or our request, and they seem to have forgotten that they received that. And so we had to present that to them again. So it's moving along. The thing is, all of the council members have indicated in their budget priorities that the full funding of the commission is one of their priorities for the next fiscal year. So hope, and we will keep track of the budget process as it moves along. That process will begin in April, and we'll make sure that that we are well represented in the budget process. Brandon or Charmaine, any additions to those 2 items?
Nope, I'm good.
So I've got a question. In the meantime, do we? I assume that we just go and as we have been doing. Is that the game plan?
Well, I don't think we have any other option other than we until we get additional staff. We're proceeding as we are, but our ability to ramp up is kind of contingent upon the staff. And the last item I put on the agenda is our standing rules, which we have a subcommittee for, and we did have a subcommittee meeting a couple of weeks ago to review the standing rule for case review and report preparation. And I was going to work on a draft of that after that meeting, but I've been involved in other things that got pushed to the front burner. And so we'll reconvene sometime probably next week. Well, maybe after I have a chance to draft something, I'll convene a meeting of that subcommittee so we can begin working on that.
Yeah, I was going to say that this is going to put a big burden on Charmaine, because she's not going to have any help at all. So, Brandon, I think that as commissioners, we have to be very, very patient. All of that she has to accomplish, because she's right now, and it looks like in the very, very near future, is going to be a one-person show.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you're right. Yeah, but we do need to be cognizant of that, so that we, the tasks that we assigned to her need to prioritize because she can't do everything. We got a request yesterday from Joan Dawson via Charmaine, who would like some direction on what we envision the investigatory process to look like. And then, and Charmaine, you can maybe help me with the wording here, but she asked whether it was going to be fact-finding or evidentiary, and to me that's kind of the same thing. Maybe Kate as a lawyer can explain the difference between a fact-finding investigation and an evidentiary investigation. But I thought that might be a good time for us to begin looking at what we think that the investigation process would look like in terms of what they do, what the outcome of an investigation is, what the steps of an investigation is, perhaps even how we're going to determine which cases to investigate. And well, Charmaine, can you provide any further clarification as to what Joan is looking for?
I think you covered it. When she talked about facts-driven or evidentiary, I think she was referring to whether or not the commission will be, I guess, reviewing internal affairs files, or will it be more a gathering of information and creating their own? But she did stress that she needs to have from the commission some type of direction on what the commission's vision looks like for the investigative process. So that's something that this committee should be looking at. Okay.
And I can tell you that it's not going to be looking at the IA investigation. That's not what that's not what an investigation is. My thought is that this might be a good time to call some other.
Doug, can I
yes.
ask a question before you
Go ahead.
going? Am I the only one? This makes me nervous. Am I the only one? I mean, I think we probably all agree with you, what you just said, that an investigation is not reviewing an IA case. Is there any advocacy for that? What's obvious to us, is there any advocacy for that position that we can do or should do to ensure that investigation doesn't get defined or delimited as a review? Do you get anything like a whiff that it's even possible that they could circumscribe investigation as review?
I don't think that she was like trying to imply that. I think she was trying to like figure out how the investigation was going to look itself. And that's when, you know, when Doug and I spoke yesterday, thinking maybe that's something that we can look into, how other agencies are conducting the investigations, what the steps are going to be, whether the investigators are going to be out there. If an officer involved shooting took place, whether the investigator is going to be out there with the officers, how that's going to I guess what the procedure is going to be.
Yeah,
what the procedure is going to look like.
I think that's really important. I wonder if we might want to proactively provide some language from NACOL that lays out what the three forms of oversight are, the three models, and then makes very clear that if even, I don't know, it just makes me nervous.
Yeah, it'll be up to the commission, well, this committee, what the committee finds. If the committee does decide to move forward and, you know, contact NACOL and look at other agencies and put something together to present to the city attorney's office. But she's relying on this commission and the ad hoc committee to provide her with what it is that they want it to look like.
Okay, so then a follow-up question for this committee, since we're done with the 4 roundtable series, you know, the initial 4 roundtable series, I would be happy to put together another roundtable or 2 on the question of what should an investigation look like. I would be happy to put together some training for the community on what NACOL says an investigation looks like, and then ask the community after that which aspects of this model are important to you. It sounds like a really important question, and one of the first insistences of the community was that every aspect of what this committee does be transparent. So I want to find a way to involve the community in this in a way that's appropriate for this committee.
Charmaine, this is Kevin. We're referring to investigations in terms of OIS and ICDs, right?
No, but you raised a good question of it. I think that there may be a different procedure, a process that they do for in custody deaths and officer involved shootings. For example, I really like what they do in Riverside, and they have developed a good model where the review board investigator participates with the initial walkthrough with homicide, and they share information along the way, but they do their own independent reports and investigations, which may be different than other types of investigations. And I don't know to what degree bodies across the country that do their own investigations have access to the internal affairs investigation. I know in some of the material, some of the materials that we were sent from Jason up in Northern California, it included agreements with the police department of everything that the police department be required to provide to their commission, and had like a list of 75 different things that they could ask for from the police department, and the department was expected within a certain time frame to provide those to the investigators. And so before I answer Patrick's question directly, I think it might be good for us to do some investigation so we have some models and things to present. We have community input. So I was thinking maybe we could assign people before our next meeting to call different people to see how their agency or commission or whatever it's called does their investigations, and then maybe have either Patrick or Nancy to gather materials from NACOL as part of that. And
so Doug, I would love to call places. I'm still back at the beginning though. What are we referring to? Because I'm trying to figure out exactly what they're meaning by investigation. Because as far as I knew, the language was every case we're going to review IA's report except OIS and ICD. So what are we referring to when we say investigation right now?
Well, that's what they're asking us, and so I think that we need to indicate that these are the steps. This is what an investigator will do. An investigator will interview the complainant. The investigator will interview the.
So they are asking about what investigators do on OIS and ICDs only then?
No, on everything.
On everything.
Yeah, and so we.
Kevin, just one correction. The Measure B says with everything, so not counting OIS and ICDs, it's talking about for all other cases, we can review and we can do, if the board chooses, we can do an independent investigation of any case. So I think the question is, in all of those cases, what are the protocols for an investigation?
Okay, so we're trying to come up with our own administrative, what that looks like, but doesn't it make sense to kind of do that with the investigator? Because the criminal investigation is very specific, and these investigators are gonna tell us how that can look, right? And what kind of tools they can use in those instances versus us trying to have ahead of time some format that says this is how it would or should be done without even the investigator's input.
I mean, but that's why I'm suggesting that we contact the people who do the investigations at other agencies to see exactly what their investigation consists of and what the steps of their investigation are. And it may be different with officer-involved shootings and custody deaths and other complaints.
Doug, I think something important to note, there was a really important in-custody death case heard by CLRB this week, and there was a news story about it. The board, CLRB, the members voted to reverse the investigator's findings. And so the investigator went back and redid the report to hold the officer in question accountable for the in-custody death that occurred. It might be worth us, at least on this committee, reviewing the coverage of that case, but also, CLRB publishes its reports. We might also, when they post their finding, we might want to take a look at that to see. Yeah. I mean, it's an important. The reason I'm suggesting that, not only because it's a really important case and it's a moment of CLRB really taking the reins of its own oversight, with the support of the community. I'll point out it was a long open meeting. But in addition to that, it would be interesting for us to look at those fringes of investigation procedure where the board says to the investigator, there's something wrong with this report, we need you to change it. I think that would be interesting for us to look at, in addition to what you're suggesting.
Yeah, and that's part of the process.
Yeah.
And actually, I was thinking that we might have somebody, if we split up making calls, I was thinking that CLRB would be one of them. And I wasn't aware that there was an opportunity for public input on specific cases, which is a very different mode of operation than than we have. And another difference may be too that some agencies may have access to the IA investigation and others don't. For example, I know that CLRB doesn't have any interaction whatsoever with internal affairs.
Hi, this is Kate. Can I just also make a suggestion?
Sure, go ahead.
I know that Andrea has done a lot of this research. So I think if you're wanting information, one person that you should contact is Andrea. And my understanding, and I could be wrong, just reading the news reports, and one of our guild attorneys actually has the civil case, is that they got additional information. They were denied. They did not receive all the information that they should have received from the sheriff's department. And so when that additional information was provided, then the recommendation was different from the investigation, and they changed their vote on it. So, that just underscores the importance of getting all of the necessary information that they're starting to realize that they're not getting everything. And I think that came out because of the civil lawsuit.
And so I wonder, maybe we can invite Andrea to our next meeting, and if that's not possible, if
well, I can certainly contact her and see what input she would be able to provide through me. I think she's probably got enough meetings on her plate these days. I will do that. So I will contact her, and if there are particular jurisdictions that she thinks would be useful, I can get that information to the group.
Okay. So if you're good with it, Doug, I have a little taking notes as I go, or if the committee is good with it. I want to call CLRB, RSO, LASO, LAPD. I want to hear anywhere there's an administrative body like this that does their own independent investigations, not just reviews of IA cases. I want to see what materials or information I can get from all of them and then bring it back here, because I want to hear it firsthand. I want to see exactly what process they use, and then I can report back to the committee on what they want to do with it.
I think.
And I got a text from Charmaine, who was asking about a roundtable of investigators from NACOL, which I think it's a good idea. Are you thinking that as a community roundtable, Charmaine, or?
I mean, yeah, just to get all the information and see the different models that's out there. We can also, well, it'll be open to the public and invite the community as well. So we can have an educational thing also as we are deciding on what the vision for the commission will look like. It'll be inclusive of everyone. But I think that since we're talking about inviting Andreas and Jillian, and, you know, Kevin has some ideas also, and, you know, we mentioned Riverside, it'll be good to have all of them at this roundtable, and then they'll be able to give us the information right then and there, and we can just take what we can get from it. It'll be recorded also, and then create our vision from that.
And I'd add to that, I love the idea of Kevin contacting these agencies. Kevin, I would include Seattle, New York City, Denver. You know, these are all, we can generate a list based on NACOL info.
Okay.
But I would also recommend someone we've already had visit. Nancy, you'll remember Jack from the Bay Area, who's been an investigator for oversight boards for 30 years. We invited him to a board session or to a meeting of this committee.
Was it Jack or Jaden or
Jason?
Jason, maybe.
Jason
Sorry, I should have remembered his name. But he was an investigator. That's what he did.
Right, exactly.
And he did it for oversight commissions for 30 years. So he'd be an interesting perspective too, in addition to the other things we've talked about.
Yes,
and after he met with us, he sent me investigator job descriptions for several different agencies, as well as the agreement I was talking about of what the department, and I think it was in San Francisco, is required to provide to their investigators, and then also the agreements they have with the departments regarding officers. That's the right word, or to an interview, and that's part of. So maybe, but I like the idea, and I don't know whether Patrick willing to take this on as a task to set up a community roundtable, and maybe NACOL to come up with a couple of maybe not a couple, but maybe you don't want to have too many. But I'm thinking a panel of 5 people who could talk, and then the community could ask questions, as well as we could invite everybody to do that.
And Kevin, I just put a link in the chat if you're able to see that. If you go to that, it's a very long outline, but if you scroll down where they're going through the strengths and weaknesses and descriptions of each of the 3 models, they have a long list of what investigations typically do. It's scroll down and it's under the heading investigative authority. So that'll give you a sort of structure as to what typically the investigation process looks like. And yes, I'm happy to plan a roundtable with investigator people and NACOL people and whomever this committee wants. And then I think it would be useful to have a follow-up roundtable after that, another listening session where we hear the community talking back about what they heard and what they liked and didn't like. So I'll start putting a suggestion together and present it at our next committee meeting.
Okay, and so that'll be Patrick's homework, is to work on setting a NACOL presentation roundtable, and then we can do a feedback roundtable afterwards. Kate is going to see whether or not Andreas St. Julian might be available to come to our next meeting. If she's not, maybe she can share some things with you to share with us, Kate. Kevin, in the meantime, will contact some agencies. Can you include CLRB in that?
Yeah, I have those. I have that written down right now. Yeah, CLRB, and then RSO. I'm gonna contact basically SoCal and Northern California, but then also East Coast, Central. Yeah, kind of everywhere.
And I would include Riverside, because I really like their model there of cooperation with the PD, or maybe cooperation may not be the right word, but collaboration with the PD on how they do their officer-involved shootings. And I think a key question to find out too is to what degree do the different places have active IA investigations, and what is their level of access to information from the department itself? To what degree do they, do their own investigations of witnesses and so forth, or do they rely on interviews that have been done by the department, or both? And so I guess those are some of the questions. So that'll be Kevin's homework assignment. Nancy, do you mind gathering some materials from NACOL on a definition of investigation and steps of an investigation? Just see what written materials that we have that we might in what we recommend. You're muted, Nancy.
Charmaine were you trying to speak, Charmaine?
Oh, I just went to chat and I just asked you, can you include San Francisco?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, so Nancy is muted and I can't see her, so I don't know whether she hears us or not.
Let me see.
One thing, Doug, I just wanted to add, and I put it in the chat, but we've both the CRB, when it was the CRB, and Internal Affairs have actually had a lot of conversations with Riverside. And over the last several months, they've gone radio silent and they've just stopped responding to us. And I don't know if it's just because we were bugging them too much, but just as a heads up, if we're reaching out to Riverside, they may not even reply, which they just kind of stopped altogether for the last several months.
And
who was contacting them?
I'm sorry?
Who was contacting them? Us or the PD?
Both.
Okay.
When we were trying to do the remote access piece, I did the initial research, and then PD was contacting them to find out how they did it, what worked, what didn't work.
Remote models. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of suspect that maybe they were calling too much, is my guess.
Sure.
Because even when I reached out to him, I mean, it's just usually he was pretty good. He'd get back to me within a day, and now it's like he just doesn't even reply.
Well, also, everyone's super short because of COVID. It's so shorthanded.
Yeah. True.
I wonder if it's a staffing issue, if they might have had a switch in staff. So
I just put a list, link that has a whole list. Yeah. All right. You got it.
Yeah. You saw that, Kevin? Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a good list too. Thank you.
And also Riverside on their website, the entire investigatory file for homicide cases all before SB 421. And so, if you talk about transparency in officer-involved shootings, you're not going to find much more transparency than what they do. That's why I like their model. Well, Nancy is not. Well, is she?
I'm here, but I don't seem to have very good control over the mute and enabling anything. So I don't know.
You're unmuted now.
I am.
And we should see your stop video button. You should click on that. We should be able to see you. But
well, the other day we had a meeting and it kept kicking me out. Is this a regular Zoom meeting or something else?
This is a regular Zoom meeting. I don't know.
Nancy, you may need to update Zoom. If you haven't patched it with the latest update, you may need to do that.
It seems to take about 5 minutes to respond to when I click on start video, it like waits a while. I don't know.
Oh, now we can see you. So it's working now. So we can hear you and see you now. Anyway, my request is, would you mind gathering some materials from NACOL as to the definition of an investigation and the steps of an investigation, et cetera?
I'll give it a shot, sure.
And then I can assemble some of the stuff that was presented previously in terms of, or I received previously in terms of job descriptions, because from the job description, you can see what the expectations are. Okay, and next week and give the reports, and then we proceed from there. So and Nancy, we were going to, Kevin, are you taking notes?
for this purpose, but I didn't know I was doing meeting minutes.
No, we were going to have Nancy do it when she got on, but then we forgot to ask her to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure I could recap.
Well, I mean, up until now, everything has been a recap of updates, and so let me just, if somebody can write down, and Kevin, if you don't mind doing it, the assignments for next week. And so Nancy can check with NACOL and get written materials on investigations and what constitutes an investigation. Kevin is going to contact several different agencies, including CLRB, Seattle, Denver, Atlanta, New York City, LA, and San Francisco and Riverside. You may not have time to do all those by next week to find out what their investigation process looks like, and ask specifically both for complaints as well as officer-involved shootings and in custody deaths, and also find out what their level of information sharing is with the department. And then Patrick was going to work on a proposal, including a proposed panelist for a community roundtable. And Kate was going to see if Andrea St. Julian can join us, and if not, see if Andrea has some thoughts and materials that she can share with us via Kate. And I think that's it, unless somebody else wants to take on a task. Okay, and should we meet next week, the same time, same place?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, and so we'll just
have
our next meeting at noon, and those will be the homework assignments. And so we'll have a discussion a preliminary discussion next week of sharing the information, and that'll perhaps give us some ideas of questions to ask during the community roundtable. And I think that's it. I asked Charmaine if she had a time frame, and she didn't really indicate, but maybe Charmaine, if you don't mind letting her know that we're working on gathering information for other places and getting community input, and we'll be getting back to her within a few weeks.
Okay, I will.
And I don't know whether or not it's her intent of including this in the ordinance. Part of it may be the definitions that she was asked to come up with. And so, but regardless, I think that whether it's in the ordinance or it's part of standard operating procedures, it's, we're going to have a proposal that they're going to have to share with the in the meeting confer process. And so we're, and so we're, proceeding to the next logical step, actually. And
I have a question, Doug.
Sure.
So kind of going back to what Joe was saying earlier. So right now, we just have Charmaine and no other staff, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you think there's a way maybe that, I know it's a big process and they got to, like they said, vote, or not vote, but actually open a new department, and that's going to take a while. But is there a way you think like we can petition city council on her behalf, or some way where we can get a temporary staff member in under just temporary rules? That way there's someone that can be trained to handle like a bunch of this administrative load for her for complaints or something else, like just in the meantime.
I don't know. We made it loud and clear to the mayor's staff.
Okay.
I don't think that's.
And I don't know what else we can do. And I think part of the problem is that they've got this huge hole, and they're going to be looking at laying off people. And
that's true.
And part of it is too. I know that they're waiting to see what the money flows from Washington, D.C.
Sure.
And what kind of strings will be attached to the funds that come from Washington, D.C. So they're really hoping that they're going to receive some money, some assistance from Washington, D.C. And until they find out how much money they're going to get and what the limitations are on it. They really can't make any decisions.
Yeah.
And so,
all right, just an idea. Just trying to find some way to make it a little smoother for everybody.
So.
Thank
you.
I
think we've tried every option available to see what we could do to try to push things through. You know, and this is, I think, the curse of city government is it works very slowly, and they don't always talk to each other. When we were talking about the budget, you know, we were a little surprised that they're like, oh, we didn't think you needed any money for this year. It's like, well, we've been pretty clear about that from the very beginning. So I know when Doug, Poppy, Charmaine, and I were on that call, you know, I think we were probably all a little bit frustrated because it's like, you know, we've gone to every city council member, we've shared our proposed budget, we met with the mayor's office, and, you know, as Doug pointed out, for some reason, they seem to have all assumed it was just for next fiscal year, not what we're trying to do now from the point of the CPP coming into force to, you know, next fiscal year. So we're trying to push that as hard as we can, because obviously we do need the support because we are getting more complaints coming in than we've had in the past. So we just can't continue to do more work with fewer resources. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, the commission started now, right? So it has to be effective now, not next year.
Yeah.
Well, and,
we've been letting them all know our opinions on that.
Sweet.
Charmaine, do you mind sending out to the full ad hoc committee the budget for the next fiscal year?
For what? So you just broke up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the budget process. You know, the dates and the process for the budget for the fiscal year that begins on July 1.
Okay.
We know, you know, so we know when there's going to be hearings and community forums and so forth, so that we can work with San Diegans for Justice to mobilize people to speak at those, and hopefully speak with united voice as to what we need. Okay, is there anything else we need to do?
I do have one short item that Charmaine and I had a conversation with Internal Affairs yesterday. Specifically, we were talking about the audio recordings. One of the things that they had brought up, which is kind of new, not new, but it's our last closed session meeting was the first meeting where when we'd get to deliberations and the voting of our closed session cases, we would put the Internal Affairs team back into the waiting room, so they were not present for those components of the meeting. Obviously, it was the first time we did it. It got a little bit messy here and there, but they actually had a recommendation that instead of them basically being there for the whole meeting and constantly be moving in and out of the room, that they would be available to the team to ask any questions prior to it being presented to the commission. And then if at the commission meeting, there are additional questions that other commissioners bring up, that they would make themselves available on the Thursday after that meeting to be able to address any of those. Then we can come back to the commission and share those. So that was their proposal. I think it's just to try to save some of their time so they're not hopping in and out and it's not as disjointed. I said I'd bring that to the transition committee so we could discuss that. I personally, I don't have a problem with that, but I can open it up to all of you guys to share your thoughts or feedback.
We wouldn't be able to vote on cases that way, would we, Brandon? If we had a question for them that was so important, we had to ask them instead of answering it ourselves?
Yeah, so that was why they were saying they would make themselves available for the team to really be able to, if the team has any questions, that the team needs to be able to support that case. But yeah, your idea is correct, is if there are questions that the team cannot answer, then we would most likely not be able to vote on it, and we'd have to go back and talk to Internal Affairs on the Thursday and then bring it back.
I think the teams should answer all of their questions. It's not their questions that we're really worried about when we get to the meeting. It's questions from people like me or Patrick or any of the other people there that are frequently asking questions about stuff. And those are the questions that we need at the time of the meeting, not 2 days later.
Right, but I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to dance on the pinhead, so to speak. I mean, because there's the opinion that we don't want Internal Affairs in the meetings. And then at the same time, there's the need to have them there if there's questions. So we can't have it both ways. Either they're there or they're not. But That's kind of
But
my opinion, but that's why I want to open up to you guys to share your thoughts.
It's not actually having it both ways. I mean, once we figured out how to do it technologically, it was pretty seamless. We just sent them to the waiting room for the discussion part. And in terms of their time commitment, there's not really a change. In fact, they get kind of a 5, 10, whatever minute break if they need to talk about something else or whatever, but the time commitment's the same.
Well, they were proposing not coming to our Tuesday closed session meetings, so they would not be there at all.
That's why I feel like we need to talk about this as a board. I feel like this shouldn't be a transition committee discussion. I feel like it should be a full board discussion, and maybe it should be a full board well, I don't know, but I feel like this shouldn't come to this committee. It should go to the whole board.
Well, I think it is part of the transition of what we're doing, but we had the meeting literally yesterday, so that's why I brought it to this. And I agree with you. I think obviously what the transition committee is doing is we are making our initial assessment, and then we present that to the full board and solicit their feedback. So like I said, we just had that meeting yesterday. I wanted to bring it here first, and I anticipate we would push that over to the full. Sorry, I keep saying board, the full commission to be able to debate and discuss the merits of it.
So I apologize. I have some light distractions here at my place. I want to understand. They're saying just not come at all because we're putting them in a waiting room too many times.
I don't think it's too many times. I think they were just proposing that as an option, and I said I would bring it to the commission to discuss.
Well, so what's their insight then on when we have questions related to the cases specifically that they need to answer? What do they propose then, that we delay all that and
yes,
push every vote to next week?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, their comment was obviously prior to a team presenting it to the full commission, that if the team has any questions, that they need to fully understand that case and be able to articulate those issues.
That's just not realistic. Questions come up from other board members. So
exactly.
And I think, I mean, their point was, and I even suggested, one other option was maybe they're not there, but someone like one of the lieutenants is available on call, and we could always call them on the phone. Hey, we're talking about, case 1, 2, 3. We have a question about this, and then we can get their feedback. That was one of the ideas I tossed out there. I think, we've only done this for one meeting, and I think there's going to be a little bit of trial and error. We're going to try to find out what works best for both the commission and also internal affairs. So I think, to Patrick's point, I think I wanted to bring it up to you guys first, so at least you guys could think about that, and then bring it to the full commission, and then the commissioners can all talk about what they either think is a benefit or a negative of changing it.
So Brandon, I have a question about this. It seems to me then that they're asking you guys to have another meeting, right? If they're gonna have questions that you're gonna answer the following Thursday, that means that everybody has yet again to meet the following Thursday to accommodate those questions. Questions and answers.
I apologize if I wasn't more clear on that. So the team that was presenting that case on Thursday would meet with internal affairs and say the commission had these questions. They would get those answers, and at the next meeting that we'd already have scheduled, then they would represent. Here's the answers.
So it's still another meeting for the team.
That's going to take way too long.
The team would have to have the team would have to have a phone call with internal affairs or whatever. Yeah.
But it's also going to, if we don't vote after we've discussed, it's not like people carry long-term memories of these cases in that way.
Especially with how many cases.
So we'd come back the following week and we'd answer the questions, which inevitably would lead to another discussion about it. And so you're basically, this is a bad idea.
I don't want to go the opposite direction of the intent of removing them, but can we, I guess as a board, we do need everyone's input on how they feel about what was proposed in general, but also it's not mandatory that they be gone, right? Couldn't we also vote how many people think they shouldn't be in the room when we deliberate? And if that's not a problem, then we just keep it how it's been.
Well, but we already
had that vote.
Yeah.
Oh, we did. Okay, got it.
So,
that's right.
Yes, we had the vote when we created the.
That they not be there. Okay.
They not be there for the deliberations.
And vote.
But
yeah, I've agreed.
you know,
with
and I
Patrick
might
on
point out,
this.
you know, in the
There's no
future, I mean, the team, well, in the future, we will be getting the entire case file from internal affairs. And so, you know, sometimes some of the questions that are asked because the team doesn't have the entire file. Internal affairs has the entire file, and they have to look up something in the file itself. And so those types of questions in the future, you know, the team should be able to look up itself. But I do think, yeah, I like the idea.
I do think for the long term, you know, that we do need to figure out what this structure is going to look like. And I think if there's some way of having a kind of question period for all the cases up for discussion, I get that, you know, some other structure would be better rather than them getting up and leaving and coming back and getting up and leaving and coming. I mean, that is
Annoying.
It's annoying and it's weird and it's slightly disrespectful.
Right,
it's slightly disrespectful in a way that I don't think we mean to be. So we do need to figure out another structure, but the answer is not for them just not to be at the meetings when we're presenting the cases. That there are just too many big and small things that come up that, you know, small things like, did this person have BWC? And then bigger questions. So I think it's clear that this committee doesn't support this suggestion.
I'm not sure, Patrick, because the kinds of questions that we ask that we have to go to them are few and far between. We can answer most of them ourselves. If a team's done a good job with their report, they're going to annotate whether or not officers have BWC. They're going to know that. And all kinds of questions that we end up referring to police, within the board, we have enough knowledge to answer for ourselves. I think we ought to try this one meeting. I think the next time we have a closed meeting, we ought to excuse IA and try doing it ourselves and see how we do. If we end up and there are 3 cases and we can only vote on one.
Fair enough. Trying it. I mean,
why not?
Well, What I would propose is let's keep it as it is. So we'll do the same thing we did for the closed session. So our next closed session before the open session, we'll do it just the way we did before. And then at the open session, we can discuss it and debate it. And but that way the whole commission can actually have a chance to speak about it before we change the process again. That would be my recommendation. But again, as I think we've talked about, it's not really necessarily a transition committee issue, but I wanted to bring it up since, you know, we were also part of the people that made that initial recommendation that went to the full commission. So at least got us thinking about it. And that was all I had on that one. They brought it up yesterday, and I just wanted to share it on our meeting today.
I think that's a good plan.
And Doug, with that, I think you were trying to make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Yeah, before you brought this up, but that's
sorry. Well, this was the other items, so yeah.
Okay. So are there any other items?
So moved.
Diana showed up. I wondered if Diana had some comments we need to hear.
So moved.
Diana, do you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I was just thinking about, you know, what Nancy said about, you know, trying it at least to see if that, you know, if it works. But, you know, it does become cumbersome and, you know, bring them in and out. So, but, you know, whatever works, you know, I'm for the bigger picture. So however we can make it work for the commission is what I envision it being.
So
perfect.
Okay.
All right, guys.
And then
Thanks, guys.
I think we have a motion from Patrick to adjourn.
Adjourn.
And we will, seeing no objection, we will adjourn.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
next, guys.
President weekend.
Yes.
Well, that's right. A 3-day weekend, whatever that means in today's environment. So, go everybody.
Bye.